Welcome, everyone. My name is Jeremy. I am one of the co-founders of NEWaukee, and we will be talking about Talent Communities Day. I got a couple housekeeping rules. Just to give a quick rundown of the housekeeping. This is a meeting instead of a webinar, and we kind of do that. We really want to see people's faces. If they can't be on camera, that's fine. But we really want to keep the chat open to other guests. You might see someone on here that you want to connect with. The webinar format is just really interactive. And since we're talking about communities, how can you build community if you can't have two-way communication with other people? So if everyone also could rename themselves with their name and their company, we have, if you want to go into the renaming section, I'll give you a second to do that. And just put your first or last name and your company, just because we have some people that are with companies and some people that are with cities or geographic areas. And when I'm talking to people, if there's questions, it'll just help me kind of understand a little bit better of who you are. Next is the LinkedIn portion. If you want to connect with other people, please, right now, if you're in the chat, post your LinkedIn profile if you feel comfortable doing that and you want to connect other people. If everybody could do that right now, it'd be great. And you can then save the chat later, which if you want to connect with somebody after the program, you could do that. And the last housekeeping thing here is just, I'm going to launch a quick poll just so I can get a better understanding of your familiarity with the topic. If you've done this, and kind of just gauge a little bit more about everybody in the crowd. Wow, doing that fast. Excellent, thank you for doing this. So, okay, so we'll save that poll for a second here. And so I'm, just by looking at the poll, it looks like there's some of you probably have a high level of openness and you showed up today because you're receptive to new ideas and some new experiences, and you're most likely looking for something new and different to attract and retain talent. It looks like some of you showed up because you might be curious what a talent community is, and that's good too. And maybe the third is you're a contrarian and you want to see me fall on my face. So hopefully that group is relatively small today. But we'll get started. Just so everybody that is not familiar with NEWaukee is an engagement agency. We help companies, organizations, cities with engagement opportunities, the candidate experience, the employee experience, or even the customer experience. But really it's around, a lot of people come to us around making new possible. So whether you're looking to have a new initiative in a company, or you're looking to create something new in your community, that's a lot of times where we get tapped. People are coming to us if they have a challenge attracting talent and they want to look at a different way to engage people. If they want to engage their current workforce, or again, in some cases, a customer, and they look into the customers. So we work with people. We've been doing this for a long time. But really, you came here to talk about talent communities. So I'll just kind of give a spiel here, as we all know that we're never going to be the same. Even if we don't know which all ways are going to be different, we can certainly see there's a shift, and we kind of have an opportunity here. We have a once in a generation opportunity to reimagine really everything about the way we work in our jobs, the way we run our companies, and especially the way we attract and retain talent. And the questions I think we hear a lot are, how are people going to work? Where are people going to work? How do we engage? How do we keep our corporate culture levels high? How do I attract people to my city if they can live anywhere? For those of you that are here from us representing a city. And then, that knowledge worker can, again, live anywhere. Does this increase the competition to attract talent? Does it increase it? Does it decrease it? So, we'll try to answer some of these questions. And really what we're going to realize is that, what was effective yesterday might not be as effective today. And because the future is uprooting, the way we live, the way we connect and allure people to our cities and our companies. And if you think about even, how we've, for a while, and if those are, I know some of you are not from Milwaukee here, but we made a big push to attract companies to the region, and a lot of cities do that. One of our most famous ones was Foxconn. But as slowly you saw a lot of people shift in trying to attract people over companies. And COVID has really expedited that. And you see Tulsa did a really good job of focusing just on people, because people start things, right? People start communities, people start companies. And I think you're going to see an even bigger shift in that. As companies don't have to move anymore, they can, it'll be all about people. And that's where talent communities come into play. So that mindset transformation must lead us to a revolution in the way that we think about talent. And NEWaukee, we've always been focused around building community. And we've always looked at community as a business case, not as philanthropy. So this presentation is about talent communities reimagined. And I'll just kind of give two really interesting examples in the last week of how powerful community can be. GameStop. If anybody is lucky enough to purchase that stock a week ago, you realize that a community on Reddit has completely and single-handedly upended the structure and system of the norm, and how a community has done that. A community has kind of went back against the norm and changed things. So in that case, organizing a community led to change. If you're not familiar with the Clubhouse app that launched a while back, that had about 10,000 users, and then overnight exploded to millions of users. And if you're not on there, it's called Clubhouse. You can look it up. Clubhouse is an audio version of a bunch of different micro communities around shared interests and understanding. So I think so often we don't invest in building community because we think it's a soft investment that naturally happens or doesn't directly impact the bottom line, when in fact it can transform your company inside and out. Things just don't go viral. They go viral because the power of community that's built around it. And that's what something like Clubhouse or something like GameStop's stock rising, it was all backed by community. And so what we at NEWaukee have been doing is focusing on how we can do this around talent for years. The world's changed, but building a genuine community hasn't changed. There is a record amount of people professing social isolation. We're overconnected, but we're more disconnected than ever. And the need for community is even more critical than before. So the fundamental question I think we all have to answer when we're attracting people to our companies, our communities, are that person has to answer is, do I belong here? And can I make it here? And that's what talent communities provide for people. So, coming out of this pandemic, I don't want us just to focus on another recovery. What I think we can do by implementing talent communities and reimagining them is come out of this with a complete revival. And we'll kind of go into where ROI comes from. We've all heard of return on investment. If I invest in a talent community, what's my ROI? Well, ROI really comes from ROC, and that's a return on community. And I kind of gave some examples from before, and why we want to change processes. A talent community is a process change, and when you think about ROC, that's a process change, the mindset change. And we hear this a lot, and my business partner Amanda always talks to me about this, is we hear people say we love our process, we just don't like our results, right? And if you think about that, people are always saying we want to change our results, but they never change the process. And there's questions that people come to NEWaukee all the time around. No one knows who we are. If only they knew who we are, they would love what we're doing. We can't seem to get enough tech engineers. We can't seem to get enough early stage talent. We can't seem to get enough welders if you're in manufacturing at our company. Our city is a great place to live and work and play. We just need to get the message out. Or we need to attract top talent, as if that community, or as if attracting talent is finite, when it's not. It's infinite, right? You're always attracting people to your company. And then, how do we engage our remote workforce? All these things are about process changes to get to the results. And I'm going to give you a quick example. So of proactive systems for goals. So back when the pandemic started, a couple or almost a year ago now, just give you this quick analogy. So a lot of people will start running and they'll run a marathon, and that will be their goal, right? And just like in when you're running a marathon is this running a marathon, if you're not a runner, is a really long goal to achieve. So back when I started, I had to make a decision. Do I stay on the same path of not running or not working out, or do I get in shape? And this have you ever started working out, anybody on this call? You realize that you always have to start on a Monday, right? You could never start on a Wednesday. You could never can't do that. You gotta start working out on Monday. So you might skip a Monday. But most of us, when we start to run a marathon, that goal is entirely jaded because you haven't changed any of your systems. In fact, over 90% of people quit running the first 3 months. And those that actually hit a marathon quit right after, about 50%, because they just set a goal, they never changed their process. And so when I started running, I didn't have any goals in mind other than I wanted to change the process of how I do this. So when I started, I built my day around it. I changed my work schedule. I created inspirational running routes. I focused on running as a meditative thing and a mindful thing. And I had zero goals in mind. But after a year, I'm able to run a marathon. I've lost 35 pounds doing this because I changed a system. So talent communities are about changing a system. So if you want to implement one of these, you're going to have to do something different. So a talent community is a mechanism that employers use to keep warm pipelines, to recruit for future talent. And recruiters love talent communities for several reasons. The first is, if you think about one of the main reasons, is there's a warm pipeline of candidates, and you sometimes can have a surplus of passive candidates that aren't even looking for a job but are interested in the company. And employers set these up because they want more qualified leads, they want less dependent on job boards, they spend less time on advertisements, they want better quality applicants. All these things can be tracked in a talent community. And they want to increase that interaction with people. The challenge is, or the problem really is, a lot of people have set talent communities up as databases and not as real communities. So it's about, and when the internet first launched and we started recruiting people online, we got into this habit of like recruiting 1.0 is we're going to put something out there, we're going to wait for people to come to us. And that strategy over time has really led us to a wait and see, or build it and they will come approach, instead of going after people. And so the problem with a lot of talent communities is that we don't have a two-way communication. We treat talent as finite. Like, I have to hit this goal and fill this role. As we are going to be, if the company is growing, we are going to be infinitely trying to recruit people. So most of the talent communities that I've seen set up aren't about community at all. They're about a transactional approach to building a database. And sometimes they're not built with the company brand or even identity in mind. And that's kind of the problem with them. But the good thing about it is what they do is talent communities actually are a proactive way instead of a reactive way to attract talent. And I'll give you an example of that. Those of you on the call that are from Milwaukee probably recognize this building. It's Transfer Pizza. Back 10 years ago, when Transfer first opened, they built this facility. They didn't deliver pizza. They built this place on an island. There really wasn't anything over there. It didn't have a high chance of success in that area or in that specific block. And what they did to build a community around what was really interesting around their restaurant, they went out and they gave pizza to every single entrepreneurship event that happened in the city. So they they went around and they surveyed the area and they said, well, there's an entrepreneurship here, we're going to put our pizza here for free. We're going to go over to this entrepreneurship, we're going to give them pizza for free. And at the beginning, what they became is this pizza place for entrepreneurs in Milwaukee. And what was so interesting about it is that once you walked into Transfer, you would recognize a whole bunch of people in the entrepreneurship community at the beginning when they first started. And what they did there was built a community around customers. And if you take that same approach when you're attracting talent, um, to getting customers as they did here to attracting people, you have what a talent community could be. It's about getting to the passive versus active job seekers. And that's what a talent community really does well if it's implemented well. So right now, and it'll be a little bit different because we are in a higher unemployment stage, but right now, 5 to 20% of the talent market is active. That means they're searching for a career, and this is according to LinkedIn, actually. They're looking for, they're underemployed or they're employed and they're actively looking. And they usually find a job by going online and posting, but still to this day, a lot of people start finding careers through networking or through other people. And if you notice that, and I've noticed this lately too, is there are people that don't network that are now the biggest networkers I've ever seen because they're looking for a career. And that's a reactive approach, right? If they would have spent their time up front building a community around them of people that can help them in the future, they would they wouldn't need to network as much now. And I see a lot of people hustling to find jobs for a good reason. What talent communities do is they get to that 65 to 75% of a talent market that's passive, that isn't looking. Where real the top talent's employed. Most of the time, anybody going to your talent community page inherently, unless you're a really big consumer product, is going to be active. We want to get to the passive, and passive people find companies through networking, through networks, through connections to other people. They don't apply for jobs. And that's where we want to get to. And we know that when people get referred to a company, they stay longer. Whoops. One second here. Sorry about that. So we know that when people get referred to a company, they stay on average of 2 years longer. They're quicker to hire, and they save a company money. And that's really what talent communities can offer, is a lot of referrals. So what goes into these talent communities? Some of you have already probably done some of this if you're coming from some companies. Your employer brand is huge in a talent community. This is the infrastructure of a talent community. You're already probably doing some recruitment marketing. You're buying ads. You're trying to position yourself position your open jobs, and you have a communications department. That's kind of the infrastructure of a talent community. The second is some of the companies that are probably a little larger have employee research groups or business units, or they have internal innovation programs, or they have a group of brand ambassadors that is their job is to go get referrals. You have some kind of referral bonus. So there's internal programs that companies create that are all generating activity to the company to form a community around. And then there's early stage programs. There's internships, there's K-12 outreach, there's university relations. All these things when they form together are building communities in different sectors. And these all go into a talent community. And then there's these external programs where a lot of companies or cities don't really do, but they're transformational experiences. These are the programs that are out there building your community. You're being really proactive about going where talent is instead of waiting for it to come to you. And these kind of external experiences, whether they're strategy or their events or their networks, are really meant to build brand belonging. And that brand belonging is a set of experiences that addresses the culture of the company and the opportunity that people could see in the future with that company. It's a person-to-person connection. So just to recap before I take a quick second to stop and check everybody's pulse. What is a talent community? It's a platform that allows members to share common interests and ideas. It's based on the concept of a shared conversation and understanding. There's a high level engagement of a talent communities. It's two-way communication, not one way. It's you turn your employees and your members into brand ambassadors, and it's led by employees and it's led by the community. So what's not a talent community? A database of people that applied for a specific career, right? That's things that our community are salesy newsletters, spam, only shooting out emails when you have an open job. That's not a community, that's a database. That's marketing. It's one talent communities aren't one-way communication. Talent communities that have nothing to do with the employer brand or the identity of the company aren't talent communities. The new engagement, or there's no engagement whatsoever with the candidate ongoing. Like they come to the database once and we never talk to them again. People change, right? People change over time. If they apply once and it's 3 years later and we have no new information on them, it's not really an engagement strategy. And talent communities really aren't recruiter led or managed. They can be part of the community, but as if you're someone on the line that recruits tech talent, one of the things that can ruin some communities, especially in the tech industry, is if it's all recruiter led. And so that's what's not a talent community. So I just want to take a pulse here because I can't really see the chat. And is everybody? I just want to share this poll. Or everybody kind of see the poll here? So some of you are building them. Everybody kind of clear on what a talent community is? I can move forward. Anybody still want a little bit clarification? And you can write something in the chat. Excellent. Everybody's clear. Cool. So we'll keep going. The bottom line is job seeking isn't an interest, right? So you don't build communities around job seeking. On Friday night, I don't gather up a bunch of friends and say, hey, you know what, you guys want to go apply for a job together? That'd be really great, right? So communities don't form around that. Job seeking is a task. Real community is a feeling of fellowship to others. It's a result of sharing common attitudes and understanding and interests and goals. That's what a community is. And communities aren't stagnant. They evolve, they change over time, right? So we at NEWaukee have been building these talent communities for the past 12 years. And we've built a huge talent community. Over 200,000 people subscribe to our community. And when you build these communities, there's larger communities. There's affinity-based communities. And we'll give a couple examples in a second. One of the communities we built a while back was people that are new to a city. There's gender parity, there's young professional, a bunch of different affinity communities. Some of you that are on the line might have employee resource groups that are around affinity. And then there's interest-based communities, right? So when you start thinking, there's tech communities, hiking communities, sports communities, there's those in manufacturing should be targeting maker communities that exist. So all these different communities, your company or your community should be targeting if they if some of this is around the identity you're going after, right? And we'll talk about how to set one of these up in a little bit, but just understand that there's many different, when you say you want to attract everyone, that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard message to spread that everyone is going to want to come to my company. But if you start looking at different micro communities you can create or be a part of, it's just kind of a breakdown of that segmentation. So, we've been building communities around all of these different things for years. And when you build really strong communities, like I said before, around what Reddit did to GameStop and what Clubhouse is doing right now to spark new communities, we've been doing through experiences for the last 12 years. And each dot here represents someone that has actively participated in NEWaukee talent community from across this region. And here is across the country. People that have participated in one of our programs, one of our strategies, subscribe to what we do. And then here is across the world. And so the power of community can reach global now, right? And the power of community for people to, you're talking about a company out of Milwaukee that has a global impact of people that joined our community for what we do. So the question I saw here is, what platforms do people use to engage segments that are much versatile? And I'll get to that question, Brooke, in a second here. There's a couple different platforms we can recommend, and this might help as I go through of how to build these. But where do you start when building talent communities? If you're a company and you're looking to attract a certain type of person, whether it's welders to a manufacturer, or whether it's tech workers to a tech company, or any company in that matter, where do I start? So the first thing we do is we want to map out the communities that are already in our community. And if you haven't done an asset mapping segment before in your community, we actually walk a lot of companies and a lot of different, we've walked universities through these, we've walked other communities through asset mapping programs. It can be a real eye-opening experience if you do this. But because talent communities already exist, right? They exist in meetup groups. University programs, we talked about your UR relations, civic organizations, social organizations exist out there, internal organizations and companies that have different business resource groups, city initiatives that are out there that are looking to do specific things that might align with your company. And then, your K-12 programs, all these different communities exist. And I just want to kind of go back to there. If we're not looking at where people are already coming together, that would be where you want to start, right? So talent communities could be as simple as you integrating with some of these groups. If you haven't been on Meetup, there's hundreds of different organizations out there that are around talent. Just in Milwaukee alone, I believe there's over 50 to 60 different tech groups that meet on a regular basis. How is your company, if you're looking to attract people, showing up to those? If you're looking for, we were talking to a company the other day that was looking for 75 welders. Well, are you showing up at where there's maker spaces? And if you're not, you got to do something different. You got to change your process if you want to have different outcomes. And it's really about going where talent is, and whether that's online or in person. And I just want to, in the chat here, and I'll kind of look at the chat. What industry is best at building talent communities? And you can just post this in the chat. It's kind of a quiz for everybody. What industry do you think is best at building a talent community? Day in and a day out that does this. Tech, skilled trades, higher ed, education, healthcare. Okay, a lot of them. Military is actually a really good one. You're right. My favorite, and I think these are all pretty good. Military is a really good one. And someone said higher ed, but it's college sports. Right? College sports, if some of the companies do this, they build their model around this, kind of inherently not even knowing. But if you think about college sports, they have to build a great employer brand, and they have to build a great consumer brand. But if you think of college sports, they go where talent is, right? Online, in person, and they build an experience to sell the community where their university is located. And then if they actually attract people to that community, to their community, in this case, the Badgers, they integrate their people into that community. And when they move on from that company, let's say someone actually leaves the company or leaves the college when they graduate, they don't let you get away that easy, right? They create another community on top of their existing community called an alumni. And, you know, I know that talent communities are successful because when you go to college, you build a huge allegiance to your college, right? Your alma mater, and you become a brand ambassador. And it's pretty crazy. You become a brand ambassador for something you go into debt for. And in some cases, you pay off your debt and you pay them give more money to the school in the form of donations. That's how powerful a talent community is. And if you think about companies, there's no connection between companies and the general public. If you get a job, one that actually pays you instead of going into debt, and you leave in less than a year, you wouldn't think about making a donation back to that company, right? But you'll do that to a university because they've built a community around you. And this is the challenge companies face and communities face is we're so we are so worried about the company and the economics of it. We forgot about the people. And those that have a university relations programs, you can kind of identify with this, right? You're going to where people are. But why do we stop there? Why do we stop just when people are in college? There's a whole infrastructure of young professional groups across the country that if you're looking for early stage, that 3 to 5 years of experience, why don't we take that same approach to all these young professional groups that we do in college and build infrastructure around those talented people? Or do the same thing around tech workers or welders or whatever you're looking for. And this is the key, is to act like a college sports team. And how do you do that? Well, you start getting your people out into the community. Because when it's all said and done, people don't really want to hear from the company, like your corporate Twitter. They want to hear from the people inside the company. They want to hear from the stories. The first thing we do when anytime we work with a company on setting up a talent community is we start to develop a whole team of people that can talk about personal success stories, the growth sectors of the business, the innovation and creativity that's going on inside that company, the community connection that a lot of our companies talk about that we do, and how we give back to our communities, what the corporate culture is, all the mechanisms for change, those stories of someone that started as an intern that now is this C-level. Those kind of stories are the stories that you want to start integrating into these talent communities that already exist. So I'm going to stop right there really quick and see if there's any questions around asset mapping communities and around kind of integrating into them.
I have a question.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Audrey Cam. I'm from the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce, and I actually have some colleagues on here from our Economic Development Council, and we've also been working with our Convention and Visitors Bureau. And this is the first that I've heard of NEWaukee. It's really interesting because we've been talking collectively about an integrated talent attraction strategy. And I'm just wondering, like, when you guys started NEWaukee, are you engaged with some of those traditional groups like Chamber, EDC, CVB? Like, how do those all fit in with this strategy and what you guys are doing in your city?
Well, the organization, so everybody kind of works aligned with each other. So NEWaukee isn't hired by the city of Milwaukee. So we are hired by, we've worked in other cities, we've worked with other companies. So we aren't the chamber. So the chamber has its kind of all initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of for just Milwaukee specifically, a lot of our ideas and our shared understanding are kind of the same with the chamber. They're aligned with the economic, we work together on certain things when we're brought in to do that. But, at the end, we're an agency. The programs and stuff we create and help our companies create here are dynamic. They end up attracting people. And I'll share a couple of those right now next. And I'll show you how it works with our chamber in that regard. But yeah, I mean, we have conversations with them. We'll align on certain initiatives and programs. It goes back to the asset mapping thing, I think. So for example, if the chamber has an initiative around upskilling XYZ people or attracting tech talent, and we are brought in to work with them on that. That's where kind of we align. Otherwise, we're independent agency that works independently with organizations that want to do this. That makes
Gotcha.
sense.
Thanks. Yep, that helps.
Someone raise their hand, Aaron?
Hi, yeah. I'm curious if you can share a little bit, maybe some tools or frameworks for asset mapping, because it makes a lot of sense, but also I imagine there are some good approaches, and without them, that's a really massive task.
Yeah, it is.
Any recommendations?
I can share what we can do is because our asset mapping presentation is an hour long, and we only have an hour here. I can share, maybe I'll share my contact information. I can send some ideas out there on how to get started on something like that. But it is another presentation. We'd be happy to set people up if they want to get started on that.
Actually, Jer, I hate to jump in on you, but following this, we'll be sending out a workbook that sort of walks you through all of these tips and tricks. And I believe inside there is an asset mapping activity.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Ange. Ange is jumped in there. She's my business partner in NEWaukee, so she wasn't just some random person that's sending out workbooks to you. So if you get, it's not spam.
Yes, well, I am known for the workbooks though, so you'll
Yes.
enjoy it.
Yes. Okay, so we talked about mapping, and we talked about how to get your company in front of those already existing talent communities. You know, sometimes, as we all know, we like the new, and NEWaukee has new in our name. It's about to make new possible. So I just want to talk about building talent communities and what to look for and how to start. And then I'll show you some real world examples and the impact they've had. So how do you make a talent community personal? How do you not make it just a database? And I want you to think about, first is why you're setting it up, the boundaries you're going to create in a talent community. And the boundaries might be, I'm looking for tech workers, or I'm looking for early stage, or, you know, we went through our census, you know, the new census is now yet, but we went through our old census data and we realized that people leave the city at 18 and 19, but they actually come back at 30 to 39. Well, you know, so you're setting up boundaries for who you're targeting in your talent community. And it also has to do with your authenticity, your identity as a company. You know, if you're a tech company, setting up a tech community makes a lot of sense. It can be sometimes unauthentic if we set it up just because we want to attract tech workers, but we don't have anything of value to give back. So that's the big thing. Focusing on connections is the other thing when you're setting these up. You're there as a company, you have the resources to provide people a lot of connections to each other and facilitates those connections. But when you're setting these up, they're about experiences. They're not just about events. And I'm going to share a couple of those that aren't events too. But these can be online, they can be in person. I've harped on this enough that communities are infinite, they're not finite. So we don't just say we want to attract 10 people or want to attract X amount of people, because this is a never ending thing as attracting people. If you have a goal and you stop at that goal, it kind of ends there, right? You're going to want to, if you're a company here, you're going to want your senior leadership involved in this, you know, being out in the community, being one of those connections. If I was setting up a talent community at a company, I would have a community manager that I'd be thinking about who's going to manage this community. It can't just be, we email them once a month with information about our company. That's our talent community. That's an email strategy. That's not a talent community. You're setting up these referral programs. Sometimes companies like if you think about Nike and Google and Facebook and Salesforce, they have all these private first to try experience things with their talent communities that people get special access to. The real, you know, the most important thing of setting up a talent community by building it yourself is that you get to own your audience. And every time you actually try to attract talent right now, if you're doing this online, maybe you're trying to attract people for a specific position, you're paying for that post. Maybe you're a part of someone else's talent community. Maybe you asset mapped a community and you're part of the university and you have to pay a premium. So a lot of times when we're a part of someone else's community they already built, we're paying to access their audience. right? You're paying, even social media. You don't really own all your social media if you think about it, right? You don't get to talk to every single one of your followers every time you post something as a brand, corporate brand, or even as a community. At NEWaukee, 90% of our conversions to some of our programs in our community are from our owned audience. Most of the people online here probably subscribe to what we do or heard it from someone that subscribes to what we do. And I can see that by how you signed up. So it's about owning the audience. That's the most important thing of why you'd want to build a community. Everyone, if you think about this, it's really taking a marketing approach and getting we think about this sometimes like, let's get as many eyeballs on our brand, let's grow traffic to our website, and let's see some modest returns on that marketing investment. If we can, but we can track it, so it's important. But too often we look at that marketing as an expense, but what if you could turn that marketing into your company's biggest asset? And that's what owning audience can do. And this is a really like political example, but you could see how owning your own audience is important. And what happened to Trump by not having, some people took away Twitter, right? So he didn't have an audience anymore because he didn't own it. And that's what owning your audience is. Your email distribution list, the community you've built is owning your audience. And that's what we do really well, is you want to get people into your database that you communicate with and have a two-way relationship with. So I'm going to give you two case studies here, one a company and one a region. First is the company case study. So one company came to us and said they wanted to show that they were an employer of choice in the Milwaukee region by addressing gender parity in the Me Too movement. They said NEWaukee could just set something up that would position us with our new initiative of gender parity in the workplace. So we did a design session with them. We did an asset mapping session with them. And we came back with a program called The Shift. It's a program around connecting females through dynamics. Some were live before the pandemic, and then they went to online. But it's an ongoing program that addresses issues that people face in the workforce. And we built that program for 2 years for them, building their brand and having them own that audience, right? Having them be a part of it. And it wasn't just about the RSVP numbers, the people that actually subscribed. It's about these people that entered this community and how they've been transformed and how they're going to tell other people. So over 2 years of building that community with them, they were able to get 4,525 people to participate in this program. Obviously, people have made new friends. That's really important in a community. People have found new careers. They've got brand impressions. They've got all those things that you track on. They've even got new clients. One of the side effects of community or building talent communities is you can gain new customers that way. But going on the notion that these 4,522 people that entered this community and came back on a reoccurring basis, and then when you start thinking about that, those 4,000 people are you and all the other people they talk to. The average person has a network of about 148 people. If you do the math there, 4,525 people times 148, that's 6,000 or 669,000 people that you could tap into if you build a powerful community. And that's how things virally start to spread again, because a community was built. So in this community, people, this company is located here in Wisconsin, but the community built beyond Wisconsin. And that's what's important to attract, especially if you're a region here looking to attract people. It's building that community. And this program still goes on today, and it's still growing and building, and people are still meeting each other. And it's been so impactful for the company that once we can be back in person, we're thinking about moving it to other cities. And this is a map of all the people that kind of have showed up or RSVP to that community across the region. So this shift was very, very successful for this company. And we started noticing something afterwards. Expanding upon that shift, we realized that, people were women were searching for radical candor and professional connections in this distributed world. Again, we're more connected than ever. We're literally, that's true, but we're more disconnected than ever. 60% of Americans feel lonely. They feel left out. They feel understood. And Gen Z is the loneliest generation to date. And social media is making a big, impact on that. 73% of social media users feel lonelier. But it's, when you start talking about this, you're like, well, what does that matter, Jeremy? Well, that matters because it's in the workplace too. Only 2 out of 10 people say they have a best friend at work. And you might think that's hippy dippy, but if you start looking at the longest running study on human happiness in the world is done by Harvard. It's a 75-year study on happiness. And the one key to happiness is friendship. And if you start looking at Project Aristotle, which is a Google project, it's a massive comprehensive study on the number or how teams work and creating the best teams. And what they put introverts and extroverts together, did all these things. And what they came back to was the number one thing to make a good team work was friendship, because friendship leads to psychological safety and it creates the ability to create radical candor. And that's why we created this, what we're calling here is the Rev Collective. It's an exclusive membership organization for non-binary individuals and curated accountability groups for the fragmented workforce. So those of you that were remote teams right now, we're building communities. We're doing this as the Rev Collective, but we're also doing this inside companies. So you're building inside talent communities to attract outside people. And, we've had this going for over a year now, and hundreds of people have joined. They've gotten promotions, they've found new jobs, they've grown themselves, but they've also built belonging. And the power of this community can be inside a company too. And I wanted to touch on how these things grow in the evolution. So it's not just about creating an event like the Shift, which we just went over. It's about how these things evolve and they're not stagnant, and how they can grow into better things for your companies. Sorry, and I'm going to try to get through this, and then we'll answer questions at a time because we have a couple more minutes. And then I'm going to do this a case study here for the region. So these are for the people that are online, like people from Peoria, or people that are looking at talent attraction is if you're a region, not a company. Over 8 years ago, 10 years ago, we were tasked to create a statewide talent network of early stage talent. I believe Rebecca's even on this call from the Wisconsin Economic Development, or she used to be from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. But we were looking at how do we build a talent community of young professionals and interconnect them across our state. And so we started to work, and then we started asset mapping all the things that exist around young professionals in our communities. And all these dots are the organizations that existed, but they never talked to each other. There was no infrastructure in place. And so we built a program called YP Week, which was just a week-long experience that started in 2012. That was about connecting people to their community. It was about connecting employers to that talent. It was about supporting small business. And it was about looking at community as a business case, not as philanthropy. And thousands of people since 2012 have participated in this community. It keeps growing. It's now grown outside of Wisconsin. It's in a lot of national cities. But this program was set up so companies could interact with these existing talent communities the same way you do when you go to a university. If you're trying to attract college students, you could in theory do this with young professional groups if the infrastructure is in place. But here's an example of the amount of people that came to the talent community. Just in Milwaukee alone, since we started, it's 48,000 people have subscribed to this talent community called YP Week. And it's grown and evolved, and we're always managing it and always changing it. People have taken it upon themselves to create their own YP Weeks in their communities. But you see the power again of how you attract people to the region. All these people know people, And that's about creating your brand if you're a community right now and you're trying to attract people to it. All these, this started in Milwaukee and it went to Wisconsin, but you could see a lot of people outside the area participated in it. And so those are a couple examples of companies that and communities that have built these with us. There's a couple that we're working on right now in many different formats. But these are some of the other people that we work with they're thinking about this, whether from an employee engagement standpoint or talent community externally. And kind of as I close up here, goodbye isn't forever. When people leave your company, there's another talent community that you can form. And remember when we talked about what college teams do best is they create alumni strategies. And here's an example of what Coke does right now. Coca-Cola creates social justice themed virtual dinners for all its people that have worked at the company. Salesforce, if you're not familiar with Salesforce, a large corporation, created a program called Dreamforce. That's about creating huge communities that really inherently help them attract talent, but also customers. So if you haven't set up an alumni program yet and how you engage people that work for you that left on a positive note that could come back now that they have more skills, this is another form of a talent community that you should be thinking about. A lot of companies are, and Nike is a really good one. They've created Nike Run Clubs. But so there's a lot of companies doing this. There's right ways and wrong ways to do this, but it's another way to think differently. The most important thing to all these talent communities is about building belonging and have a really detailed plan for this. These are a couple tips. When we build these, there's a really clear purpose here on how we're going to onboard members into this community. It's not just getting an email address and them entering a database. How are we engaging them? If the company is large or if the community is large or small. And again, I've shown you a couple of results of talent communities that are huge. Talent communities can be 20 people. They don't have to be big. It's not always about the size of them. One of the things you want to focus in a good talent community is if community members feel like they can have mechanisms to change that community and alter it and participate. So how you set up mechanisms in that community for people to have their voice heard is important. You're being very inclusive of that. And then obviously, again, a talent community is two-way communication, not one way. When we set these up, it's about having clear purpose, clear identity, and setting up boundaries for them. Fostering a lot of one-to-one connection. Not everybody can speak in front of big groups. So having these communities have a place where people can connect in smaller groups. And then I'd monitor the community and sentiment and well-being. Like monitoring your community because it always changes, right? The communities aren't stagnant again. These communities will evolve over time. So they might get stale. Your job is to make sure that they change and they evolve to what the community wants. So that's kind of the presentation today. I have a couple minutes for questions. Again, I hope that when you think about talent communities and you think about this differently and about changing processes and change what could be really impactful in your community as everything is changing right now, and we're here to help you make new possible. Here's my contact information, and I'll kind of open it up to questions very quickly. If you have some in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand. A question in the chat is, will we be sharing the presentation? Yes, we were going to send, and what are we sending out again?
We'll send it in the next day or two.
Okay, and then we'll send the presentation and we'll send up some other worksheet on this. But we're here to help. If you do want to reach out to me via email, LinkedIn. Oh, perfect. That was awesome. LinkedIn, call me. We can help. Even just have an initial discussion about these. They've been great for us over the last 12 years of being a company, and they've been great for the companies we work with and the communities we work in. And then last thing I'll say is that it's never been more important than now to do these things. When we talk again about where people are going to live and how we're going to attract talent, how we're going to engage people, everything is up in the air right now. And again, this is about being proactive, not reactive to the problem.
Hey, Jeremy, it's Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I think one of the things that, as we were talking about YP Week, and Ange and I chatted briefly about, is for people to remember, and maybe you can give some advice on this as well, but as you're going through this process, you're going to force people to stop and think differently about what path can get them to the result that they want. And sometimes that's met with resistance, and sometimes that's met with an embracement of what's going on there. But right, as people are looking through and starting that asset mapping, can you just share kind of how, right, you want to pull everybody in and acknowledge all the different things that are there, but sometimes you need to just keep moving forward. And right, understanding the value and continuing to communicate. We understand you're doing that, and what you're doing is still great for you, but we're going to add this new layer and this new part, and here's how it's connected.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if you can share some, insights or kind of feedback that you guys have experienced as you've gone through your iterations on how you've overcome some of those obstacles.
Well, I think community is messy, right? And understanding that I think so often community is about, there's so many different voices. And if you can come together around what the understanding of what we're trying to accomplish that's the most important kind of step one. Now, is there going to be a lot of things happening in the community to attract talent? Yes. And I think we always say, well, it's this or that. And that's really the wrong way to look at it. It's this and that. There's no one, like, talent communities by themselves aren't going to be your magic key to solve all your problems. And I think this is kind of what you're getting at, Rebecca, is that there's got to be there's layers, right? All this stuff is layers. Like, you set up a talent community, all your talent problems for your company aren't solved. You're just going at you're being proactive again, not reactive. And I think all the different things that come into place, as long as you keep pushing the community forward and the community is part of that process, I think you're doing everybody a good service. I think when it gets derailed because someone doesn't understand where you're going with it, is also just part of the process, right? Like, not everybody's going to agree on the same thing, but what we do know is that humans are a social species, and humans want to come together, and building these types of things around their interests are very helpful. I don't, Angie, you have anything to add to that?
I would just echo that and to say that there is always a point of alignment. You know what I mean? Like, someone asked the question about the chambers, right? Like, it's like, oh, we already have a relationship. I don't know how to weave those together. There certainly is, when you think about this in a more comprehensive way, as an overarching strategy or a filter with which to look at all of the different talent attraction and retention strategies you're working with. There's always a way to stitch things together, and that actually would benefit more often than not your organization, rather than keeping them as separate strategy lanes, because you'll end up having cross-pollination of that network or that community in a way that can be really exciting and dynamic.
And there's also a thing to look at it this way too, is that, in the private sector, there's a lot of redundancy in services, right? There's 25 different insurance firms. There's a lot of different companies that overlap and do something similar, but a little bit different. But when we talk about communities, we generally only want one of something. Like, we can only have one person do this. We can only have one person do this. And I don't think that's healthy, because innovation doesn't come generally from committees. Innovation comes from people with ideas that build these communities and build people around them that want to do common good. And, just when you think of like startups to big corporations, there's sometimes you can have a new startup that has 5 people topple a company with 1,000 people because they're passionate about it. So allowing these different pockets in the community to kind of bubble up and support them, as opposed to push them out, is actually really a benefit. But I think we always try to, like, stay in your lane. And I think the lanes are blurred now. Every little piece is important to a community. More is more.
Yeah, and I think maybe I just add that, right, the importance is to be able to consistently communicate your vision of where you're going, right? So people may not understand the how you're getting there, but they can understand the where you're going. So just making sure that you consistently communicate that these are all integrated and moving towards this goal can help people wrap their heads around something that's different to them that they haven't experienced before.
Awesome. Okay, we're at time. Again, we'll be sending this out. If you want to reach out to me, I'd love to, I can talk to the community all day long. So give me a ring or shoot me an email, and then we'll thank you for joining us.